If you're listening on podcast, be sure to tune in to our YouTube channel on YouTube at Wild and Weird WV.
Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast. Tuning in with us yet again for another installment of Wild and Weird Radio. This week, we're going to be trying to figure out who exactly is haunting who. Are these residual haunts? Are they time slips? Or are they transient energies? We don't know, but we're going to be covering several of the data points on tonight's show. But before we get into that, how have you guys been?
Been good. Had a good week. Been working on some stuff. You and me did some stuff over the weekend. That was fun.
Yeah, we got into some stuff in Point Pleasant again.
Yep. Seems like we're haunting Point Pleasant.
I know, right?
Wonder if it's residual or if it's intelligent. I'm not sure if it's intelligent.
I'm not sure if it was intelligent either. I know that I rode the struggle bus at least a few times on the mini golf course.
Oh man. That course is pretty awesome. No, I'll just say that. And I think that, like I've told people, if you're going that way, you're going to Point Pleasant, you got to go in there. You got to play the Mothman Blacklight mini golf. It's just amazing. And I've played some really cool courses, and this is one of the top ones. It's a lot of fun. Not to mention,
guys, did you see that particular UFO hanging from the ceiling?
That's what I'm saying. Not to mention, hole number 6. Which is one of the coolest holes.
It really is.
Has, our UFO up there, and it's all of its glowing glory. So it's really cool. So,
it's fantastic. And I'm telling you, so some of these holes, when you look at them, you get up on them, you're like, oh man, these are kind of small to be like, I get it. It's mini golf, but these are small. Gosh. But then you start knocking the ball around and you're like, good God, how was this a par 3? I'm up to 6.
Yeah, it's a challenging course, and it's really good. So it does not disappoint.
It doesn't at all.
And the photo ops in there, oh my goodness. Yeah. I just know this place is going to be all over social media. There's no question.
Yeah, the photo ops are fantastic. You've got Del Morton Studios has a massive statue out front that's all blacklight reactive. You have awesome. Our UFO hanging over hole 6. You've got an alien, a life-size alien hanging out. Multiple life-size Mothman, and one of them has escaped.
Whoever painted it did a really good job painting the walls.
Phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. It's the company that did the outfitting for the room specializes in blacklight haunted houses and blacklight mini golf. So they knocked it out of the park.
Phenomenal degrees of blacklight painting. Just
truly state of the art.
Yep. Absolutely agree. Yeah.
It because their blacklight work looks 3D.
Yeah, Sure does.
To the point that when you see certain 3D elements, you can't tell if they're 2D or 3D.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, there was that one of a soldier behind you. I was like, is that a mannequin?
That is a full-size statue.
He's standing
6
right
foot
there.
tall statue.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's another guy like right behind.
And he's painted.
Yeah, so it looks like it's a person standing there.
Yeah, there's foreground elements that are real, physical, and then they've got the painted ones in the background, which just match right in. And
off the charts.
Amazing, dude. Just amazing.
I can't wait to go back.
Yep, definitely going back.
So how have you been, Brandon? I know you've been under the weather. We've missed you. We haven't had you for 2 weeks.
I'm recovering. I'm getting there. My voice is kind of coming back.
Nanites, right? Yeah.
I can talk fine if I change my voice.
That's how it starts.
If I talk like this, I sound better.
We just need to give you an injection of Nephilim blood and you'll be all right.
You'll be fine. We'll get you fixed.
I think I've got ghost in my blood.
Ghost in blood.
There you go.
That's what it is.
I know what to prescribe for that. Can't say it on air though.
Yeah.
Not on YouTube.
Don't do that. But yeah. So everybody had a good time. Had a good week there. Lots of projects underway, and I guess we'll be hitting the road here soon. We got any news? What are we doing?
What do we got? There's I think we do have one story.
Is there news? There is news? Okay. Okay.
Brandon, why don't you take it away with the story from our lovely loft apartment up north?
So, Canada's top scientists and science advisors have announced that they are going to be doing their own UFO investigation and disclosure, and they'll have a report ready by early fall. And I think the most interesting part was that they are actually taking information from citizen scientists.
Doesn't that seem like a groundbreaking idea?
Right.
Well, anything, it's anything better than what we did down here. So
yeah.
It's interesting. They call it the Sky Canada Project.
Oh, good for them. They actually put their name in it, and they're proud of that. So
right.
Yeah,
and they're actually really working with, like Brandon said, they're working with citizens. They're working with people who are in their government, and our government seems to try to roadblock everybody all the time. And seems to try to, hurt the credibility of individuals who are coming out with information, and all the way from people who were former top officials all the way down to, folks like us.
Yeah. Well, this is the first official Canadian UFO study in over 30 years, by the way. One of the quotes from it says all we need to know, and that would be, we should be on track for releasing the report at the end of summer, early fall. Nemmer said on Tuesday, I think our report is going to be quite fascinating on the historic front. So stay tuned. I mean, that's a little teaser, right?
It is.
It's a lot better than what we got down here. It's weather balloons. It's
how they even their government says things a lot nicer than ours does.
Well, I mean,
it gives you hope.
Canadian guys are the kind of people that, like, if you bump into them, they say they're sorry.
It's true.
So it's one of those things where it's kind of ingrained, but I'm telling you.
Go Canada. I mean, I think the worst part about this is Jamie Malson is probably going to appear about that time and just discredit any forward momentum whatsoever. Because that's what he does best. And he's getting ready to do it again, if you guys haven't noticed.
So, I've seen some stuff, and what I haven't been able to pinpoint exactly what is going on with Masson.
Okay, so he's got a couple more bodies that this time he's going to bring him to the U.S. allegedly. So he was supposed to do this like a month or so ago, and it didn't happen. And it's not the same ones, so it's not the little dolls apparently.
Okay.
I think he's got something else. So I'm thinking he's going to show up here within the next week or so, something like that. What they're all saying, and he's going to hold this press conference, and it's going to be an embarrassment to ufology. So let's just call it for what it is.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So by the time you see this, it's probably already happened. And
this reminds me of.
Well, I'm just going to say, "Told you so."
This just reminds me of that one guy who kept going to the press saying he had Bigfoot bodies. And every time it was obviously something fake.
It's just sad. Absolutely sad. And it just discredits everything. So
it does. It sucks all the air out of the cells. And
and you are watching this on Friday. So that means you listen to us on Thursday. You better have anyways.
Right.
Live. Because the live is the show that you do not want to miss. They have been going through the roof of late. We've had some incredible interactions with, the audience members, and we are setting up to do, because it is the next month. So we're setting up to do the viewer submitted photos and videos segment that everybody had demanded, and by popular demand we did it, and they loved it. And what that is basically is everyone sent in their accounts, and they sent in some of their videos and photos of some of the best evidence that they had. And we pulled it up on a live, and we do a little photo analysis of it there, and everybody weighs in. You become part of the collective, and we collectively try to figure out exactly what that could be. Doesn't mean we know what it is. It just means what it could be.
And it doesn't mean we're debunking it. We are actively trying to find a solution.
And I'll tell you
that
what,
solution rules out every normal possibility, then we're left with a true anomaly.
And we had a couple of those.
We have.
So, for sure.
So yeah, join the fun. Come on in Thursday, and put your thoughts in there. And if you had a sighting, if you had got some photos of some orbs or something like that, send them in. Now, when I say orbs, I want to make that clear. We're interested in the ones that are actually self-illuminated.
Balls of light.
Yeah, balls of light, typically ground to a treetop level. And if you got UFOs, send those too. We'll take a look at that stuff. So come on, join us. It'll be fun.
And we're interested if you've got pictures of possible Sasquatch tracks.
Anything.
If you have possible video or photos of that, send those in as well. We can analyze those in real time. I teach tracking courses, so I can work with you, and I can explain what everything is in the video. And if it is truly something that anomalous, we can tell you that.
Yeah. So send them in, guys.
I want to see good cryptid pictures and videos. I want to see something that will make me go, I don't have a clue what that could be.
Right.
Well, since we are in the news and you're talking about good cryptid pictures, have you all seen the latest depression medication commercial?
No.
Featuring a squonk.
What?
Oh no.
I saw it tonight. It rolled on the news, and sure enough, there was a squonk in the ad for this depression medication.
I mean, yeah. Can't think of anything better.
Yeah.
I had to explain it to my relatives. They're like, why is that thing? And I was like, well, here's what it is.
Why is there a sad pig on this commercial?
Yeah.
Yeah, the sad pig.
Oh God.
Well, anyway, that's exciting. So everyone keep your eyes peeled now that we have cryptids doing depression commercials. I cannot wait till we have the one that says cause hallucinations, and they put up some like
Big
shadow
UFO
people
walking in the background.
Hat men, that'd be awesome.
I can't wait until Bigfoot does.
Or like we see a dating commercial that's like, you don't have to be lonely at squatchersonly.com.
You never know, man. It could happen. It could happen.
You like overweight men who are going bald early?
I mean,
hey,
like people who like to hang out in the woods.
What's wrong with you, Brandon? That's rude.
I'm hurt.
God bless
I personally resemble that remark.
All right, that's out. We're out of here. That's news is over. Okay.
I think that Squatchers Only commercial would sound like an advertisement for serial killers.
Oh man.
One never knows.
Well, that's accurate. It probably would. Guys, thanks for hanging in with us. Thanks for tuning in as always, and checking us out no matter where you are. Remember, if you're listening to us while you're walking around in a warehouse or in your cubicle or just driving down the road, there's going to be content that is always added in that is visual. And the only way that you can see that content is by going over to our YouTube channel. And that is Wild and Weird WV. Just type that into your search engine. Go and check it out. Subscribe to the channel. You'll see more content there as well. Investigation videos. Plus, that's where the live goes up every Thursday. And if you haven't made it to our live, you got to make it. Like, it literally is the highlight of everybody involved's week. And we've built an amazing community that you can be a part of. And you've been listening to us for years. So why not come join us over there as well? At least hang out with us on the lives. We'd love to have you.
So tonight's topic
is spooky.
It's spooky.
Because we're dealing with something here that can go a lot of ways. And Ron has dug up a lot of historical facts to go along with this, and is put a lot of effort into this show. Ron has been doing, if you don't know, Ron has been doing paranormal research for the better part of 3 decades. And And the only reason I say 3 decades is because it sounds like an eternity compared to 30 years. But
Well, it's all
it's kind of like Ron is the Gandalf of paranormal research.
Yeah, it's all the same. And no, it's just a hobby, man. But there's some really good stuff. And, you hear it all the time. We were talking about this. It's like, how do you know when we're talking about hauntings, right?
Yeah.
Like residual versus intelligent. Well, those are the top 2, but there are other things. There are other categories in this. And yeah.
Well, if you're just watching paranormal TV, those are the only 2 you're really going to hear about.
Yeah.
The only way that you're going to hear about these other forms that we will talk about tonight are if you are actually part of the community and you do this yourself.
Yeah.
And you have a real vested interest.
Yeah, exactly. And possibly if you have a one of those, something like we have here, like the paranormal discussion group, where people gather and talk about these things, right? So that's really the only place you're going to come up with this kind of stuff. Because if you're watching TV, if you're watching, well, even if you watch social media, I mean, even most social media doesn't really delve into that. The others. I mean, we do, but we're not everywhere. Not yet.
Right.
Not yet. Anyway.
We're getting there.
Give us time. But the 2 most common types of hauntings, obviously, like I said, and then we have to figure out, what's a haunting, Joe? I mean, that's a good question. Let's go to bare bones definition, like no one even knows what we're talking about, and talk to it like that.
Okay, so generally, a haunting is going to refer to some kind of, non-corporeal entity, some kind of energy that is stuck in a fixed place or is in a given area allegedly for some reasons. Now, some of these activities can also be focused around an individual, like you can have a person or an object that has these types of phenomena attached to it. But in those cases, there could be other things at play. Now, typically, I say typically because I think a lot of people don't go to just open fields anymore to do some research. You'll hear about some going to graveyards and whatnot, but generally hauntings occur in homes, vehicles, and when we say vehicles, we're not talking about like your car. We're talking about a historic ship. Like one of the old sailboats that they still travel around up and down the rivers and do demos with, some of the naval ships that have experienced some of these tragic losses on them, certain battlefields, and businesses like factories, old factories or sanitariums and hospitals, things like that. Those are what are typically described as being haunted.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the most famous haunts there that we were talking about, when you were talking about the vehicles, would have been like the Queen Mary, right? And after the war in 1967, it was pretty much turned into a floating hotel. And since then, there's been way over 50 reports of ghost encounters on the ship. It's been on Unsolved Mysteries. It's been on everything at this point.
If you are a paranormal TV show host,
you know this story.
You've been to the Queen Mary.
Yeah, this story. I mean, and one of the most famous and quoted one is the one from John Smith, who reported that, basically he was hearing these sounds, these voices, and I believe it was tapping on the sides of the bulkhead. And they come to find out, it's happening in an area where the ship had run into another cruiser back in World War II. And it pierced a hole and it killed 300 sailors.
Because it flooded that area.
Yeah, flooded that area. There's a pool, I believe, that's haunted too. Now, why I brought those up is because that's kind of reminiscent of what we're going to be learning about here in a little bit, which is kind of a residual type haunting, right? Because those aren't, it's not that he can hear these sounds, but he couldn't communicate with those things. So there's no intelligence behind that. So that's more of a residual type haunting. Does that make sense?
It could be a residual, or it could even be one of the time slip types.
Sure. but which falls into residual sort
Yeah,
of.
it does fall under residual.
Yeah. It falls into, if we're going to, break those down into the camps, then it would fall into a residual because I guess you could have an intelligent time slip as well, though. So they're kind of on their own as far as categories, and we'll have to put those in there. So we're really redefining the map when it comes to hauntings is what we're trying to do.
And so, like, we're not just saying that theoretically. We're actually trying to provide you, the listener, the enthusiast, with a new blueprint, a new lexicon to use, because what has been going on in the paranormal community at large, that meaning UFO, because it's all lumped under the paranormal umbrella anymore. You've got UFO, cryptozoology, and you've heard our talks about that and how we've needed to redefine things. We're doing the same thing with this episode with hauntings.
Yeah. It's, as far as it goes, the residuals can have all the same characteristics, right? They can be detected on EM equipment. They can be detected. The only difference is they cannot be interacted with per se. They cannot give yes or no answers. It's not like that. So
think of a residual haunting as being kind of like going to one of those old animatronic pizza parlors where you're there, you're enjoying your pizza, and you have these activities going on, but you can't interact with them.
No.
You can hear, you can see, you can understand what's going on, but the thing there is non-intelligent. It can't interact with you at all.
Right. And these are the most common of our ghost stories, right? I mean, almost all of these we hear, the phantom that walks the graveyard, the lady who, you see her and as you're driving down this old road by a bridge, these kind of things. These fall into that residual category. And it's interesting to me because, there's several theories on it as far as it goes, because they include something called the stone tape theory. And that was proposed, I think in when was it? I think it was 70 something is when it was actually proposed, when it got out. But it came from a guy named Thomas Charles Lethbridge. And he's a really cool character because he was an archaeologist, and he was actually he specialized in Anglo-Saxon archaeology from 1923 to 1957. And in 1957, he retired and he became a parapsychologist. That's the crazy part. Yeah. And he went on to not just become a parapsychologist. He wrote multiple books. He wrote on dowsing. He wrote on, pendulum usage and all this. But he also came up with this theory that basically states that events could possibly somehow be imprinted on physical matter, like rocks, metal. There's the ship, for example. And they're just recordings that somehow got, pushed in there with some form of trauma or energy source or emotion, that these things can transfer into these objects, and then certain people can perceive that.
And it wasn't that these energies were the spirits of these individuals.
No.
But it was literally just the energy, be it negative, positive, what have you, was so great, so intense that it actually was impressioned on a physical object.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was first popularized in 1972. It was in a television special in the UK. It was called The Stone Tape, and that's where it came from. And it really kind of goes right along with the model that we're not talking about spirits, we're not talking about souls. We're not talking about disembodied, people. We're talking about something far more complex, honestly. We're talking about a way that your energy is written on to objects and physical, I guess a physical medium, almost like an old tape.
Almost like a tape.
Yeah, like an old tape. Remember how they work with magnetism, right?
Yeah.
That's how they work, And it's kind of the same kind of thing. But it's based off of others' works. He didn't just come up with it, because in the early days of the Society for Psychical Research, it was called place memory. It's the same thing. It's literally the same thing. It was considered as an explanation for ghostly apparitions, and it was seemingly connected with certain places, the battlefields, as we mentioned, things like that, right?
Yeah. And later, this kind of, became almost its own school of thought. And you'd see people within these paranormal communities would fight over some of this stuff, and they would want to call them haunted objects versus, is it really haunted, or is it just recorded upon?
Right. Exactly.
And that's where we get in this language issue where, when you bring up something that's haunted, if you say it's haunted, immediately science is like, what? No. But if you take verbiage that is congruent with what they know is possible, right now, we are recording terabytes, trillions of terabytes onto crystals. Okay. This is real science really happening. They're taking quartz slivers and they're recording, you heard it, trillion terabytes onto crystal, recording information onto a physical object that is practically stone. Okay. Now it's crystal, but it's a rock, for lack of a better term.
Crystal has more
it is the
properties
same scientific principles that it takes to make that happen could be what's happening on some level with these objects, where this energy is being written onto a physical item in some way, and it almost records it. That doesn't mean that it's haunted. It doesn't mean that that object is evil and it's going to burn your house down and that it's going to do X, Y, and Z. But it could just make it really weird.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's where you get your haunted objects, and that was called object psychometry, and that was from 1842. Joseph Rhodes Buchanan, he came up with that term. It actually means in Greek soul or spirit, by the way. But he didn't mean that in the context of a ghost. He meant that in the context of these things were almost alive, that they got a part of the soul or spirit or that energy, so to speak, right? And then through extrasensory perception, certain individuals could tap into that. And they could, feel that energy, or they could feel that. And we've seen this. I've seen this. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen this, and
I've had it happen with me.
Yeah, there are people,
like this is one of the few things that I've experienced in the paranormal circle with the hauntings, so to speak. This is one of the things that I've done myself, where I've touched something and I've had these flashes of where it was, what it was used for, what happened to it, people, places, things it was surrounded by, all that stuff, and it played in like flashes in rapid fire in my mind. And it was absolutely wild. And that goes to, he gave off in his description, he said it gives off emanations.
Yeah.
Meaning that, these emanations could be, you could glean information from these objects, where when you touch them, you would just be given knowledge that you wouldn't naturally have.
Yep.
That you never learned. Beyond holding this object, suddenly you just knew what happened.
Yep.
This has been done. You've seen this, I'm sure, with some of the psychic detective shows.
Yep.
Where they'll pick up an item and then all of a sudden, they go have a spastic seizure thing. Mine was nowhere near as dramatic. Yeah. I didn't have any kind of weird flinching. Like, I could see everything that was around me and the people, but in my brain, all this stuff was flashing.
Well, it's typically just a flash. And you guys who do the lives with us know that every now and again we'll do the Zener card test, right? And I'm telling you guys, what comes to your mind immediately when this happens, when I snap my finger or whatever. Basically, this is a form of remote viewing or remote sensing. I won't call it remote viewing. It's remote sensing. When you touch that object, you know nothing about that, but all of a sudden, boom, you do. So it's not that the object is haunted in any way. And it's not that it may even have, anything to do with a ghost. It has more to do with the person who is touching that object and reading that energy that thing's been around, right?
And when we look at this and go into every religion out there, okay, they refer to these types of abilities as spiritual discernment.
Mm-hmm.
You're discerning. You can touch this and you glean information from it. So that's where you have this kind of supernatural, spectral, ghosty kind of comeuppance, I guess, with how this is all connected and how it gets connected. You can see where the yarn got connected to this needle on the wall, essentially, is what I'm getting at. Because it's something that shouldn't happen, or at least we're told shouldn't happen, but we're experiencing it.
Yeah. So all those things we can't get any information from. Like, it doesn't talk to us is what I'm getting at. So that still falls within the realm of non-intelligence or residual, right?
Yeah.
So all that's residual. Then we come up into the next most common term, intelligent, an intelligent haunt. So what's an intelligent haunt, Joseph?
Well, intelligent haunts consist of perception of a conscious phenomena, meaning that we're able to communicate. The observer is able to communicate in sometimes multiple ways, either through an ITC device, through some kind of medium, through just auditory experiences or objects being moved on the ground during questions.
Validations, right?
Yeah, multiple forms of validations can happen during these intelligent haunts, so to speak. And we're coming into these places with some of this stuff now where it's starting to get a little weird.
Yeah. Very.
Because the biggest thing, this communication can also represent information transfer over time. Multiple theories exist about the possibilities of an extra dimensional hypothesis to some of these phenomena.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
which is where the weird comes in.
Right. Well, scientists speculate that there's over like 11 dimensions or
Yes.
more than that, right? I mean, we don't know.
It could be infinite amount of dimensions existing around us. And when we talk as much as I can't stand some of the guy's use of phraseology and his constant being brought up as a means to discredit experiencers, Carl Sagan had a phenomenal explanation about dimensional interaction. And you can look that up on YouTube. It seriously is one of the best descriptions. And it's that, and if you're not watching this on YouTube, you're not going to be able to see the demonstration. This is a 3D object. I have a 3D object and I have a 2D object. This 2D object is existing in its dimension, in 2 dimensions. It's only happening in 2 dimensions. It cannot see this 3-dimensional object. It can perceive its existence. It can detect its existence, but it cannot perceive it in the 3rd dimension. Even if it rests directly on top, it just appears as a circle. It doesn't appear as a sphere because it's in a 2-dimensional reality, even though this is a 3-dimensional object. Now, when we apply those principles to the possibility of the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, etc. dimensions,
insane.
Our perceptions, we can perceive that these things are happening. We can perceive that these things are going on around us. We can have these kind of intelligent interactions with this subject in another dimension, but we can't fully wrap our minds around it because our perception only exists in a 3rd-dimensional format. So we can only understand it in a 3-dimensional view while it's operating 3 or 4 dimensions beyond us.
Yeah.
Can only perceive what we're able to. And what we're actually able to extrapolate is so minuscule compared to what the possibilities of this entity, this subject, actually is and can do. We're just experiencing the effects that are happening in our dimension the only way that we know how.
Yep. It is the wave, as I've said multiple times.
Yeah.
We see the wave. We don't see the ship, so to speak.
Right.
You know, we don't even see the water.
We don't even see the water. We
just see the wave.
We see the wave.
Yeah, that's literally it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you mentioned, it's an intelligence can communicate, and there's multiple ways of communication. One of the ways was the ITC. That is a term.
And what's it? Tell everybody, in case you're not familiar, what is an ITC device?
That is an instrumental transcommunication device. And basically what an instrumental transcommunication device can be anything from, it can even be your phone, right? Like if you're using like the Ovilus or something like that, it can be darn near anything that you can use for communication with the other side. So it was pretty much coined in the 1970s by Ernest Sinkowski, and it was to refer generally to communication through any form of electronic device. And back then, we weren't talking about EMF meters. We were talking about tape recorders, fax machines, televisions, computers. They used a lot of computers in early parapsychology experimentations, just with, random number generation to see if even if people could affect the random number generators. And, these kind of things were actually being used in the field for those things. So basically it comes down to any kind of instrumentation that we can use for validation.
Now, with these, intelligent haunts, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are dealing with a deceased spirit.
Yeah.
And
I think that's important to touch because, that's your number one thing. When you hear someone talking about a ghost, they automatically assume it's the ghost of blah, blah, blah. It's the ghost of blah, blah, blah. What does that mean exactly?
I like to point out too that has a lot to do with whatever perspective you have on being deceased is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
It's like, well, some people believe that it is your soul being torn away from your body. Some people believe you're just transitioning to another dimension. You're transitioning into some other energy form. There's a lot of different perspectives on it. It really depends on how you look at it as to what that actually means.
You're right. 100%.
Like we think of deceased, but we're really, some people believe we're still the same being. We're just transitioning into a different form. So maybe we're becoming whatever that is that we're observing and recording and stuff. That's one way to look at it, at least.
Yeah, it's possible. So these types of intelligent haunts, it doesn't mean that there's a spirit trapped there of grandma.
Right.
Or whoever lived there.
And it doesn't mean it's not also.
Right. It doesn't mean it's not.
Prove it either way. Yeah.
But if it is grandma, to me, based off of how this stuff works, and if you're really a student of this, which I've had to become, okay, I was not Mr. Ghost Hunter extraordinaire. That was Ron's job, and I did all the stuff in the field. Well, over the last year,
mean, you have to remember back in when I was growing up, they did call me Egon, so I had to grow up into this. It was a curse. So.
But I've had to go through and I've studied all of this stuff from the 70s. I've read the books. I've gone through and read articles. I've read these or listened to presentations from some of these folks who've actually come up with these concepts in the 70s. And when I'm listening to it and putting it together and I remove all of my preconceived notions, I can look at this from a position where I'm able to say, oh, well, this actually kind of makes sense. Like scientifically, this could actually be very plausible. And what we're experiencing might not be grandma after she's dead, but we're experiencing these slips in time where this grandma was recorded onto the room. Grandma was recorded into the home. And we're seeing these apparitions of grandma when she was younger, and we can't communicate, or sometimes we can, because this time slip phenomena has a way of bleeding through, and sometimes the two can communicate.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can give each other messages back and forth, and they don't realize it until way later in the game.
Well,
And
the simple answer, Joe, is grandma's not dead. Never has been. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. You're experiencing someone who is still alive
now,
just out of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The now that you experience is the now that you experience. We've said this multiple times. Right. Exactly. It's perspective. It's your now and your perspective.
Right. And you're seeing it. That's why the clothes might look older and outdated. That's why this, because for her, it's period specific. She's in it. She's living it. And she sees you and you're like some kind of alien,
right.
You know, because you've got a cell phone, you've got this, you're trying to take pictures and you're like, what in the world? You know,
you bring up an interesting point, because there are people who claim that they have gotten haunted body parts whenever they've had a transplant done, like eyeballs, for example.
Yeah.
Claim that they can see stuff from the other person's life, or even like a heart. They claim they can experience things that person did. Sometimes in dreams, sometimes they'll have like waking dreams where they'll see that stuff too.
I think that would fall into the psychometry kind of thing.
I agree.
Don't you think?
All that stuff was not just written on a physical object, but part of the genetic memory.
Which is even
some people will even develop the habits that person had. Like they'll suddenly want to smoke cigarettes. They'll want to drink a certain type of beer. They'll want to eat certain foods that they never wanted before because they have that person's organ in their body now.
Yeah, true.
It's actually a scientifically studied phenomenon.
Well, my uncle, he developed leukemia due to benzene exposure. And he had to have a bone marrow transplant. After the bone marrow transplant, his hair turned stark white, and he had dark brown hair. His hair turned stark white within as his hair grew back. It was just, there was the tips of it had color, and then the rest of it just stark white. And his taste changed, like his taste in food. And it wasn't just a temporary thing from the chemotherapy, but it stuck. Like he had cravings for stuff that he'd never craved before, like certain tastes and flavors. So that's something that I firmly believe is happening, because one, there's too many people reporting it.
Well, I mean, we can go into this with there's data that suggests, and we've even seen it. I've seen it. Back when I used to do coral, one of the things that we would do, like when we did a sarcophyton, which was a coral, like a big, toadstool leather type coral. When you cut those up, which is how we propagate them, don't worry, it's okay. That's how you do it. That's how you make more coral. Yep. So when we would cut those up and we put those in a container, we would see this. The water would turn brown. Well, that's the zooxanthellae. So the zooxanthellae is what makes photosynthesis possible. It's a symbiotic relationship between, the coral and this zooxanthellae that makes the coral do what a coral does. But the point is, if you took two different types of sarcophyton, for example, if we took a long tentacle and we took a bright green one and we put them in that same water, in that brown, icky water, and we let them sit for a while, if we run some air to it, we can let them sit in there for a good half hour or so. You can even squeeze it out of them and they'll still go back in. It's recombinant genetic manipulation. It's DNA manipulation on the simplest level. And what we found is when we put those little the fragments of coral, back onto the rocks and they grew out to be new coral, they were not the same. They were a combination of those two things. And that's how we got the long tentacles. That's how we got the bright green ones. That's how we got all these different colors and different strains. Yeah. So what I'm saying is what you're describing makes perfect sense to me. If you take, any DNA from someone, there's a very good chance, in my opinion, that you could theoretically unlock some of that recombinant DNA, that genetic manipulation on a base level.
That throws back to the Assassin's Creed games. They believe that
it does.
certain memories are in your genes.
Well, they are.
That's actually a studied thing now. There's actually scientific analysis going on right now to see if that's real.
Yeah, that's where that's from.
If we really have memories on our DNA.
The Assassin's Creed borrowed from those theories.
Yeah, that's exactly where that's from.
And it was just a phenomenal game. If you've never played it, guys, go check it out. We are not sponsored by Ubisoft, but could be. So
yeah. So Joe, this brings us into the next realm. Of the that we put in here, because typically it stops right in there somewhere. Well, it doesn't stop there. It usually goes into RSPK. So we're gonna that's where we're gonna go right now, because I wanted to put non-human origins in here before we talk about RSPK, because we were following the line. It's still intelligent.
It's still
it's an intelligence.
But now it's non-human intelligence.
Now it's non-human intelligence. And boy, that is just that's chaos.
It really is, because a lot of these demonic haunts aren't actually haunts at all. The people will classify something as demonic, and one as a minister that is not super common. And I know that a lot of ministers would probably and do disagree vehemently with me on that, but I just suggest you do more research. So it does happen. Don't get me wrong. It does happen, but there's not a demon hiding behind every shadow. All right. So these types of phenomena, they actually represent an intelligent non-human entity, which may be able to communicate directly in ways that, only certain people are privy to, i.e. like your spiritualists, your ministers, or Reiki masters, your shamanistic folk. They're the only ones that can really pick up on this stuff. Okay. Or not necessarily they're the only ones, but they tend to be some of the crowd that is able to. And these are really, really rare occurrences if you actually look at real case data. But, pop culture likes to overinflate things. They do.
Movies, books,
clicks.
Comic books.
I need clicks. I need clicks. What's going to get me there? Disembodied Nephilims are possessed in my house. It's making my Tupperware burp in the fridge. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. That is just a class 5
free roaming vapor. No.
Yeah, a class 5. I couldn't get it out because I started chuckling. It was a class 5 roaming vapor, guys. But,
oh man,
this is very apropos, because here in like 2 weeks that movie comes out.
Yeah,
cannot wait. Oh my god.
Yeah. So, but you brought up a point. Here. You said that they could be demonic.
Yes, they can be. We're not ruling that out. I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
Okay. So if they're demonic, then what do we do about these other like saintly visions that also occur?
Exactly.
So you see, that's where we draw a little bit of, we have to really draw the line here. We can't say everything is demonic that we don't understand, because the saints weren't seeing demons. Unless they were told they were demons, but sometimes they weren't. They were told that they were angels. Sometimes they were told that they were this or that, and there was no negative connotations. What I'm getting at. So why all of a sudden do we jump to that? Because pop culture, and like you said,
nobody thinks of being haunted by angels because they think
why can't
it's an angel? It's good. So I'm not being haunted by this. This isn't a paranormal experience. This is a religious, supernatural experience.
Right.
It is just as weird and paranormal as the opposite side of the coin. You just happen to like this side of the coin, and you favor it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for all we know, it's aliens. Did you think I wasn't going to do it? I mean, it could be, right?
But
okay, so take us into.
I think I heard Wayne screaming.
No, he agreed with me. He was coming on board with all that.
Yeah,
I was getting there.
but unless these demonic elements were cloning people.
No,
But-
no.
But anyway, back into it. Now, something that is often lumped in to the demonic activity is and it's lumped in because of the name, really the nickname, not the real true name, but the nickname of poltergeist activity. It's classified under this poltergeist thing is this fear, right? We have this fear of some kind of energy that is able to shake the house, move objects, but scientifically, what this is called is reoccurrent spontaneous psychokinesis.
Yeah.
Also RSPK.
Yeah, that's what I like to call it. And basically, everybody thinks it means noisy ghost or whatever, but it really doesn't. It means rumble ghost. That's the literal translation in German. But here's the thing. It's not a ghost. It may not be a ghost. It may very well not be a ghost at all, simply because it's not intelligent, first of all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some theories that it is linked to someone, like someone within the family, usually a kid, a prepubescent kid who's involved in it in some way or form. But there are those who believe that it's also nothing more than just it's just made up. That they say that these kids, and all these, I kid you not, this was on a very respected parapsychological group that I was looking at, some of the information that they had. And they went as far as to say that all, not some, but all RSPK was absolutely a hoax. It was a hoax because in every single instant that there had been a child involved, or there had been someone involved who was just making this stuff up, basically, to get attention. I find that fascinating because it literally is the same as saying that all UFO sightings are weather balloons.
Yeah, swamp gas.
You don't
gas
have
all over again.
You don't have the data to make that assertion, period.
Yeah.
I don't care how good you are. You don't have the data to make such an assertion, period. And it would require you to have access to a time machine, to be quite honest, because they've been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, 856 is the first recorded instance of a poltergeist-like activity.
Yeah.
You knew that. I mean, that's true. That's when it was first brought to play. But yeah, they said all the cases are hoaxes, but can't be hoaxes simply because you don't have the data. I mean, could be hoaxes, but you don't know that. So you can't make that claim, is what I'm getting at. In my book, RSPK is very real. It falls into other parapsychological phenomena, such as telekinesis.
Yep.
Even pyrokinesis, really, because there's some cases where these things have caused fires.
Well, one of the best, I guess, in pop culture elements with RSPK was Carrie.
Oh yeah,
good one. It was with Carrie. Carrie is a good example of what RSPK is to the nth degree and the pop culture degree. Yeah. But the majority of this RSPK, you're talking about cabinet doors slamming shut, slamming shut, stuff falling off the walls, not glass levitating off the ground and flying towards people's heads.
No, think of the name. Think of the literal name, Joe. Yeah. Rumble ghost. It's a vibration. Yep. And we've seen that during some of these, these investigations, the use of a like a geophone, for example, anything that reads the actual vibration, that's instrumental transcommunication. Something is causing that. Now, we don't know what that is, but there it is. And could be RSPK. That could also be someone in your group, who's inadvertently doing it. That's the whole point. That's why RSPK fascinates me, because it's actually more of a parapsychological, it's a psychic phenomena more than just a ghost. And I think it gets its bad name from, Poltergeist from the movie. And it's a ghost story. That movie was a ghost story. And it defined badly what RSPK actually is, which is just a fascinating, in my opinion, topic.
Yeah, because it's not something that a young priest and an old priest can get rid of.
No, it's definitely not.
Believe it or not, that movie was actually written to be a lot scarier. They toned it down a lot to make the studio happy.
That doesn't shock me at all. In the era that it was produced in, like horror movies had hit its stride and was like really at its peak.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was the peak of special effects makeup and stuff like that, like physical special effects. Because in the 90s, that was when CGI started happening, and everything went to crap after that. Like, remember that movie Lawnmower Man?
Yep.
I try not to.
Yep, I remember that movie. Now,
that was awful.
Speaking of made up things.
Yeah.
This is a great segue to come into created manifestations.
Yeah.
Like egregores and tulpas.
I had to throw creative manifestations on the list because I think that it deserves to be on a list, because
100% agree.
We have to rule these things out when we go, if someone says, my house is haunted. Well, what's it haunted by? Yeah. And, one of the coolest things, the coolest, cases to demonstrate that would be the Philip Ellsford case. So go ahead and read that, Joe, just the way that I wrote it out there.
Well, Philip was born in 1624 in England, had an early military career, and was knighted at the age of 16. He was involved in the English Civil War and became personal friends with Charles II, working for him as a spy. Philip was unhappily married to a woman named Dorothea. Can you blame him with a name like that? I got a feeling like I get it. I understand. And later, he fell in love with a Romani girl. Again, totally can understand.
Yeah.
Who was accused of witchcraft, surprised, Romani, and was subsequently burnt at the stakes. Now, in despair, Philip committed suicide in 1654 at the age of 30.
Tragic story.
Such a tragic story. However, the only thing is, he never existed. He was a product of an experiment to create and contact a made-up ghost.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. It was in 1972. The experiment was conducted by Toronto Parapsychology Research Society and Dr. Eyre George Owens, psychologist Dr. Joel Witten, devised an experiment to create a ghost. And guess what, guys?
They did it.
They did. They absolutely did. The test group consisted of Owen's wife, Iris Owen, and a bunch of other people. I'm not going to read their names. But here's the thing. They had the chairperson of Mensa involved.
She was a chairperson of Mensa in Canada.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. The chairperson of Mensa in Canada.
Talk about the most arrogant group of people on earth.
Hey, they has the big brain.
Hey, they has the big brain. And that's the whole point. They has the big brain, and theys were involved in this. So
exactly.
Their goal was to create
the subject. They weren't involved in the conspiring. No. They were the test subject.
Right.
Oh.
So everyone got together in this group, all these people, and they were told, there's your goal. I want you to create a fictional character, give him a purposeful methodology, and then we're going to attempt to communicate through a seance with this individual. It's 1972, so, seance.
Seance, why not?
Today we do it with probably ITC. So the group gets seated around the table, right? And the initial seance, it had no effect. Nothing happened. No contact. No communication. Well, Owens
However,
changed. Yeah.
some things were changed.
Yeah.
He made it
changed
moody.
some conditions. He set the mood, right, Joe?
Absolutely. Very theatrical.
Yeah. And if you remember, if you remember back to when who was it? It was the Mike, right? It was on the show, and he was talking about the setting the mood.
Yeah.
When you set the mood to make these things happen, that's the whole point, and that's what these guys did. So once they set the mood to a traditional seance type atmosphere, participants began feeling presences and vibrations. They even said they had table wraps and table movement, all that stuff. Now a lot of people are like, seance, that's all crap. Well, first of all, never been involved in one, so don't have the data to prove you right or wrong in that, and I'm betting you don't either. I do, however, have the data here that says the experiment was a success, but here's the thing. They didn't repeat the test, but it was basically criticized. So it's been criticized.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have control parameters. They got excited.
There wasn't any real solid control.
No, no solid control.
Yeah, they were all privy to this information.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't a group that was not privy to said information.
Right.
They should have had a group brought in where they just told the story to.
Yep.
Not the group of people that contrived the story.
Right.
And seeing what the effects were on both groups.
However, that's true. 100% true. I can get behind you on that with your, trying to debunk the story. However, repeated tests, which they created more fictional characters, a Lilith and a Humphrey, that yielded the exact same similar type of results under those same circumstances. They were all deemed inconclusive, however. Well, they had to be, because what are you going to compare it to? You can't say, well, it's 100%. But
right.
It sure does seem like something was going on, though, doesn't it?
It really does. And what this brings into question is how much of a play does our own psychology have in manifesting and creating these things?
Yep.
I.e., how do we have these kids who nearly murdered a young girl by slicing her to death to make Slender Man happy? This is a real case, guys. You can go look it up. Look up the Slender Man murders. Slender Man was a internet creepypasta, but these girls were so fixated and so wrapped around it that it became something real to them. And they almost killed a girl, the third member of their party. They almost killed her to appease this entity, this egregore that had been created by a group of online people telling horror stories. But these minds believed them and generated them and practically forced this entity into reality, at least into their reality. Now, when we have things like creepypasta, because it's why this subject had to be added in.
Yeah.
Because now we see these things like the Rake, Slender Man, other horrific entities that are just purely internet lore, but people began to see them. People began to have sightings and experiences with these entities. Is it generated by psychic energy? Is it a collective unconsciousness that is somehow manifesting these things because so many people have read it, so many people have thought it, talked about it, that they almost spoke it into existence?
You have to remember, Joe, there's primary metaphysical, even in the spiritual, belief that words have
Yes.
creative, manifestative power. Look at the Bible.
Yeah, when it goes back, God spoke everything into creation.
That's what I'm saying.
It was words. It was he spoke, it happened.
Yeah. Same
he said
thing.
This, it happened.
Yeah. Same
and that
thing
goes
with
every creation story around, not just Judeo-Christian. This was every like if you go into some of the First Nations lore, you have these
the magic
beings
words. The magic words.
That spoke words and brought things into existence.
Manifestation.
Yeah.
That's what it's called, manifestation today. And it sounds like, again, new age, stuff, but it's not. There's been a lot of studies and they're pretty terrifying, because what it literally says is that if you are of a certain vibrational frequency, or if you can get a certain amount of people to do or think the same way, there's a possibility, as in with the Philip experiment, that you can manifest something. Now, how that works, I have no clue, but it basically falls into that holographic universe theory in some weird way, I think.
Yeah.
And then your world just gets
like these thoughts, these subconscious thoughts and conscious thoughts that we're having are somehow writing a code that brings this thing into reality.
Think about that, because it's deep. It's real deep.
Yeah.
So basically what we're saying is be very careful with what you think about. You never know. You just never know, especially if you're tired. Don't do that. I try not to do that. If I'm really tired or I'm meditating, I try to keep a calm mind. What's Yoda say? Fear and all that whole thing. It leads to the dark side, right? Yeah.
Fear leads to
anger.
Anger leads to hate.
Hate
leads to the dark side.
Dark side. That's right. See, he's right. So, guys, I got some questions toward the end of this thing that I threw in here, and you can ask your own as well, but I thought that these were relevant. And I think they need to be touched upon because we get asked this sometimes. So if a place is destroyed, can it still be haunted?
Well, this is theoretically. This is me just thinking theoretically. If what people believe, if these are truly human spirits that are anchored to a place, it shouldn't matter if the place is there or not, because if they're anchored to that place, then technically the entire structure should be part of the haunting, whether the structure still stands or not. That's just my opinion.
Is that because you think the structure still stands in a extra dimensional time slip kind of way? That's where you're getting at with that, right? Because if it's not physical in our now, doesn't mean that it's not physical now to the perspective of the person who's in that.
Because there have been many sightings in areas where buildings have been leveled and they're just flattened out fields and like ghost towns, some of the old ghost towns. One particular I've visited is Bodie. It's out in NorCal, and there are certain buildings that have fallen down and been removed from the area. Some still stand, but there's been people that have seen buildings or structures and interacted with these structures, walked into them, walked out of them, turned around, and all of a sudden the building itself is completely gone.
Yeah. Well, I've heard of, people seeing a ghost walk down a hallway and go through the wall. And then to find out, you do a little bit of research. Well, there used to be a door there. So did you just see him go through the wall while he sees himself going through the door that's there in his time?
Yeah.
You think that's just another version of a time slip?
Yeah, that's what we're getting at. Yeah, it could very well be a time slip.
That's what I think.
Yeah, it could very well be a time slip, and us interpreting that energy, experiencing that energy rather than interpreting, experiencing that energy, because the interpretation means that you would see it differently. And that's going to be our next question too. But if everybody saw, this blonde lady walk down the hall and go through the wall, then that means that it's not an interpretation. it's a perception. So you see it, it's there, it is what it is. So,
Yeah.
but if someone saw it and another person saw, an orb float down the hall and go into the wall, that's your brain interpreting it as something completely different. So in the case of vehicles, ghosts, they're tied to or anchored to some parts of these vehicles, like the Queen Mary, for example. Let's think about this. They have to be anchored to a physical part of it, because even if we use the time slip theory, that boat wasn't in the same place.
Yeah, it would almost be, it would have to be written on the structure.
A media, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at with that. It's like, so as long as there's a media, a structure, a tape to record the message on, then it's possible that we could do that, right? Brandon, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, all that sounded to me like a time slip of some sort. It's just different interpretation of a time slip. I've heard of people who not only was like a whole building haunted, but a whole part of town was.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a story where they went into a town they had never been to before, and they said everybody in the town looked like they were from the 1970s. And then when they turned the block, all of a sudden they were back in modern day times. Like that. I think someone might interpret that as a haunting if they're of a certain mindset. Someone else would say it's a time slip.
They were just driving through Huntington, West Virginia when they were filming We Are Marshall. That's all.
Yeah, probably. But there's interpretation and then there's perception, right? So that's where I'm at with that. And again, we can attribute a lot of this, probably a lot of hauntings, so to speak, to time slip phenomena, whatever it is. It doesn't mean that's the answer, though. It doesn't mean that that's 100% it, in my opinion, anyway.
So, final thoughts, guys.
Brandon?
I think that most people have a pretty narrow perspective on the whole phenomenon. I think they need to look into things a little more, especially those of a spiritual mindset. They want to label everything black or white as good or evil, but there's a lot more gray in between there than what you realize.
Joseph?
Again, it's one of these phenomena that I've had to read up on. I've had to study because of what we do with the collective. And by no means am I an expert on all of this, but when it comes to the spirituality aspect of it, based off of what I do consider expertise in the spiritual aspects of things, these don't seem to jive with so-called spirits, so to speak. I do tend to fall into the camp of time slips and the stone tape theory. Those scientifically make sense. We're recording data on solid matter that's not a computer chip. That should tell you that it's possible. And if it's possible now, it's been possible forever. So we could be seeing these kinds of recordings. We could be experiencing time slips. When it comes to the RSPK phenomena, there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of study from parapsychological groups and colleges that we're going to talk about next week's episode that go into some of this phenomena that you can't ignore. These are institutions that are studying this phenomenon, not just Joe Schmo. This is PhD times 3 looking into some of this stuff, and they're seeing probable cause, if that makes sense. Now, I think, like Brandon said, that a lot of the paranormal community at large tends to be very narrow-minded at what things are and what they are not. There are too many people that have too much of a vested interest, so to speak, to actually let that wall come down And we just need to get to a place where we're comfortable to abandon some of these preconceived notions and ideologies about what hauntings really are. And we need to look at them in a very broad scope. We live in a world where we're dealing with non-human intelligence on a semi-regular basis. Whether we want to admit it or acknowledge that or not, that is the reality that we live in, and you had better get used to it, because it's not gonna, you can't shake this Etch-a-Sketch and make it go away. It's here. And we're also seeing in the realm of study with physics and with astrophysics that time is not linear. And given those parameters, it is totally possible that we are seeing folds in time or wrinkles in time where we're able to observe and experience past fixed points in time, where we're standing in a place that was still there far to the past or far to the future. And we might not be being haunted, so to speak, but we actually might be haunting someone else in the future by being part of this time fold. Because don't just think that we are experiencing something from the past. Someone in the future could be experiencing us. Wrap your mind around that for a minute.
Yeah.
Just marinate in the fact that you right now, sitting in your house, could be an apparition or some kind of disembodied voice to somebody in the future. After you might not be dead even. You just might not be living there anymore. Might not be in that place anymore. But someone is experiencing you in the future.
Yeah.
It's something that we have to really seriously think about.
Yeah, I think temporal anomalies definitely play into the lexicon now of hauntings, and I won't rule out anything. I'll be honest, I don't rule out anything as far as intelligences go. Putting a lot of stuff aside, there are multiple. There's just multiple beliefs, not our beliefs, basically here in where we are at, but there are multiple beliefs around the world that the soul, or a part of the soul, the Egyptians, for example, believe that we had multiple parts of us, and that there were multiple sections of the soul, so to speak. I think that's close. I think that there's a possibility of that, and that model actually does make sense. That could be some of the ghosts, so that I've said before. But I've also told you, I also think that parts of us, we're energy. That energy goes and does something. I mean, who knows what it's, I don't know if it's, maybe it's, maybe it can do multiple things at once. I don't know. I'm not going to guess, too much more on that. It's all been said as far as it goes. All we're going to do is go and collect data. That's all we can do. We can only collect data. We can speculate all we want, but it's not going to do us any good, because we can't prove or disprove it. If we could, Robert Bigelow would have already did it
and published the data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so I don't think that there's anything concrete that we're going to achieve by that. But we can collect the data. We can collect multiple validations and prove that there is some form of intelligent communication taking place. We just don't know what that intelligent communication is with. And that, to me, is the bigger mystery. That, to me, is what drives this whole thing forward. I don't know if we're talking about, time slips. I don't know if we're talking about reading someone's mind. Yeah. But, all those things have to go on the table, guys. And
literally,
that's parapsychology right there. That's how it works.
If you are a researcher and you are listening to this right now, become a member of the school of thought that all the data goes on the table. Absolutely everything goes on the table, including Brandon's lungs. You can't hear it because he's on mute, but he has been hacking them up over there. So keep sending him some positive vibes there to kind of help him out. But for real, everything goes on the table. It has to. If we don't, we're not doing our due diligence. If we don't put everything on the table, then you're going to miss a very valuable part of the puzzle at some point, inevitably. It's going to happen. And I think this episode is phenomenal, in my opinion. I hope all of you guys like this episode and enjoy this one.
Leave a comment, man. Leave a comment.
Yeah,
on the YouTube. Leave a comment.
If you think we're absolutely off the wall, go ahead. Tell us. We don't
leave a comment. Grab a super chat. Do something. I don't care. Hit the like. Say a prayer for Brandon. He needs it.
Love him.
Apparently, man.
But guys, we thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, leave some comments below. Tell us what you think. If you have any questions, leave those below too, because we will answer you. There's a few of us here, and we all will get on and we'll talk to you in the chat. This is going to be a fun episode too, to kind of bleed over into next week's live. So we'll be talking about this a little bit during the next live episode with you guys. So if you want to bring those questions to the table at the live, then
photos,
by all means, do it. Get some photos, bring them in, because that's probably going to be the episode where we go into the data review.
Yep.
And remember, everybody, if you're watching this show for the first time, go ahead, drop us that subscribe, smash it right now. It's one of the easiest things you can do to help out us. We are fully crowdfunded and supported by you guys, by subscriptions to the YouTube channel. That's not paid subscriptions. That's just pressing the subscribe button and just watching us, hanging out with us. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. You're all amazing. If you want to support Wild and Weird Radio further, you can hit us with a super chat. Those go an absolutely long way. So thank you so much for all the super chatters out there. You all are all amazing. I'm going to be running you guys at the bottom of the screen here. And if you yourself would like to just join up with us, all you got to do is come over to the live, hang out, talk with us. Catch us out when we're on the road. Our schedule is going to be coming out soon on where you're going to be able to find us this year out on the road. If you want to also support in some way and wear merch, head on over to wildandweirdwv.com. Click the shop tab. Go through. There's a ton of t-shirts that you can choose from. I actually think there's a sale running that is going to be running through the end of this weekend. So if you're listening to us this Friday that this show aired, jump over to the shop and check it out. Get a shirt while they're on discount, guys. Wear it out and represent. Let everybody know you listen to Wild and Weird Radio, and support all the wild and weirdos out there. Also, tell some friends. We love and appreciate each and every one of you guys. And to cover that for you, to tell you how much we love you guys, we're going to shout out your locations on where your top downloads are this week. Guys, we've had some really, really, really cool locations pop up in the past, and this week is maintaining that course, okay? So in the country lineup, we've got the United States at number 1, Great Britain at number 2, Australia coming in number 3, Canada in number 4. Guys, y'all have been like bumped down. Y'all, Canada. We talked you guys up during the news segment. Get on it, guys. You guys are our favorite loft apartment up north. It's really, really cool and friendly. So then coming in number 5, once again, Ireland. Guys, shoot us a message. If you're from Ireland, hit us up, wildandweirdwv@gmail.com. Send us a story, send us a comment. We'll read it out loud. As long as it's, we're kind of rated PG-13. Then in 6th place, this is a cool one, guys. The Philippines. The base in the Philippines is growing. Jamaica's in the lineup too. And you guys, we appreciate every one of you. In the cities category, coming in at number 5, Charleston, West Virginia, Columbus, Ohio, in number 4, Chicago, Illinois. We miss you. We haven't been there for too long. And we need to try to make it up there at some point. We love Chicago. We love the reception we've gotten in Chicago every time we've been there. You guys are great people. And man, I might make some of y'all mad, but the OG Giordano's, that's where it's at. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Gino's, but Giordano's, it's just, Now, New York, you guys are at number 2. I thank you guys for listening up there in New York. I mean, it's awesome that we've got a base up there that's been growing, because you all have jumped 2 places from the last time we were listening. And number 1, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is no surprise at all, seeing as how
Told you.
Episode with Stan Gordon. That's the boys' home turf.
Told you that was going to happen.
So thank you guys. Ron did predict that was going to happen with that episode. And we appreciate all the listens, all the downloads. You guys come check us out over on YouTube. Remember to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. And remember, if you've experienced some strange phenomena, poltergeist activity, RSPK, whatever you want to call it, give us a shout. Let us know. wildandweirdwv@gmail.com. Stay wild and weird, everybody.